But there is some disturbing news as it relates to the race for Senate in the state of Minnesota. And this is Norm Coleman, and this is Al Franken. There is one report that has come out today that as Democrats nationwide try to make the climb to the filibuster-proof 60 votes. Now, I'm going to say Saxby Chambliss will win the runoff in the state of Georgia. I have no doubt about that, and he'll win by a comfortable margin, but you can't take it for granted. All of you in Georgia, you're going to have a chance in December to go and finish off that race up by a significant amount, but he didn't reach the magic number of 50. There were 3 people in the race. But anyway, but a lot of people are concerned. An outspoken Acorn ally is presiding over the tallying of votes in this unresolved Minnesota Senate race. The fact that Mark Ritchie, Democratic, this is from the American Spectator, former community organizer, is largely controlling the electoral process is very, very important for everybody. Because at press time, the incumbent, Norm Coleman, was leading Al Franken by just 341 votes. And the Democrats controlled 57 seats in the Senate compared to the Republicans' 40. The Senate races in Alaska and Georgia have yet to be resolved, though in both the Republicans are leading and expected to win in the end. But this was one that is definitely in play here. We now see that an improbable and statistically dubious chunks of votes appear and disappear overwhelmingly in every case, even though 100% of the vote had been tallied. All of these, seem to now be benefiting Al Franken. Now, Election Day has come and gone. But it looks like Democrats are playing the games with this election system. We're getting word here in Minnesota that as they go through the canvassing process, every single time, more and more votes, they end up in Al Franken's column. And, by the way, a guy that would be a nightmare in the U.S. Senate. A failed everything, failed comedian, failed talk show host, one of the most bitter, angry, partisan Americans we know, can't be in the U.S. Senate, wouldn't be good. So he lost the election. But the guy going to bat for Franken and recounting the votes is a partisan Secretary of State with ties to Acorn. Look, you've got to understand this. Norm Coleman won on election night. He had a margin of over 700 votes. They start canvassing the vote every single time they find more votes, but only for the Democrat. And the lead is shrinking. It was 500, and in a couple of days it was down to 300. And in the middle of one press conference, it became 200 and some odd votes, 236 votes. So in other words, there seems to be fishy business going on in St. Louis County, in Minnesota, the Duluth area, where in one precinct, both Franken and Barack Obama both netted 100 extra votes. The total was 469 for Obama, 406 for Franken. The new total is 569 Obama, 506 for Franken. So now, all of a sudden, this race is changing somewhat fairly dramatically. The guy in charge of the election system in Minnesota, Mark Ritchie, a fierce partisan with connections to Acorn. And we've been telling you all about that. I mean, just stop for a minute and imagine this. How could you possibly have a partisan in charge of the system? How could it possibly be no votes are found, not one, for Norm Coleman, and now the votes are being found only for Al Franken? Now, we got to keep a close eye on this, but I'm very concerned here. Al Franken would be disastrous. Norm Coleman clearly won this race, and it looks like they're up to funny business in the state of Minnesota. So the question is how does this get stopped? And you got to wonder if anybody in the legal department is going to step in here. So anyway, Norm Coleman's office has put out as huge chunks of votes appear and disappear with these auditors and the Secretary of State. The Coleman campaign has put out a press release as improbable and statistically dubious chunks of votes appear and disappear, overwhelmingly benefiting Al Franken. Coleman for Senate campaign today. Data practices with county auditors and the Secretary of State requesting data related to the election night results, the records related to the ballot security, and information related to all revisions made to the results since being reported on election night. Minnesota has a history of fair and clean elections, and we are committed to ensuring that this election is no different. And that is why it's so troubling to us that instead of the normal slight changes in vote totals that one would expect during this process, we're now seeing huge chunks of votes appearing and disappearing, statistically dubious and improbable shifts that are overwhelmingly accruing to the benefit of Al Franken. And as many of these unexplained and improbably vote swings are taking place, we're asking that local and state election officials provide us with the necessary data to reassure the public that the canvassing process has not been tainted. It's reported that during the night, 100 new ballots were reported to the Secretary of State's office from the Mountain Iron area of Minnesota. These previously unreported ballots contained 100 votes for Al Franken and Barack Obama. Oh, boy. Funny business. They're up to no good, I'm telling you right now. All right, now let's get to our phones here.